Thank you for your association for inviting me to share this information with you this morning. I'm speaking to you today as a representative of the National Association of Realtors versus me being a realtor myself. Okay, so let's get started here. So here are the topics we're going to cover, and we're going to answer questions, like she said, at the end of the presentation. So I know you're going to have a lot of questions after we go through this, but a little bit about the liability and risk behind international listings. So the history is kind of why we're having this webinar today. What's the reason behind all of this? The region and listings, and unfortunately most of the activity is in my region. Specific country issues, we're going to chat a little bit about exactly some of the things that happened so you understand the impact of this. And then what's your risk? Are you violating any rules or any laws by taking international listings? The NER and Code of Ethics and where they stand on this. And the Code of Ethics, we're going to give you an in-depth view. Some of us don't remember the Code of Ethics. I think the only time we really look at them is when we have to take our continuing education on this, right? So we're going to go through a few of these that are important for you to be aware of. And then what can you do? You want to be a global agent and you want to know how can you help your clients. So I'm going to chat a little bit about the structure of the National Association of Realtors. As of this past May, the National Association of Realtors has 100 cooperating associations, or bilateral partners, which we like to call them. And this is around the entire world. So our partners almost follow a similar code of ethics to ours in order to be a partner with the National Association of Realtors. And they take this relationship very, very seriously. So the structure for NER starts with global coordinators like myself. There are 5 of us in total, and we cover all the world where all the cooperating associations are. And then we have what's called a global ambassador. So the global ambassadors used to be called president's liaisons, and they used to only manage one country, but now they manage 1 or more countries. So they're NER's direct link of communication to the cooperating association. And their job is to relay information. They go and attend expos. They may go to annual meetings in that particular country. And their job is really to assist with any real estate needs that that country has. And then they go and they report back to the National Association of Realtors and to their global coordinator. And then you have ambassador associations. And ambassador associations, Texas, I know you have at least cities in Texas, Belize and Mexico, for example, are 2 of your ambassador associations to those countries. But not all countries have one, but the ambassador association assists the global ambassador, the former president's liaison, with inbound and outbound visits. So for example, they'll host the country's delegation when they come into NER, whether they're coming to mid-year or whether they're coming to annual. They help with trade missions. They're to go and visit that country. We try to make that at least every other year. And they help with anything that that country needs and that the global ambassador may need some assistance with. So these are the countries in my region. There are 12 of them, and this is mainly where all the problems are lying right now. So 2 years ago, countries in my region, along with South America, asked for a meeting with the global group at NER. And as cooperating associations, they are bound, as I said, to our code of ethics, and they wanted to know why US agents weren't following the code of ethics that they were bound to. So they gave us, over the 2 hours, numerous examples of listings in their countries that were listed by agents in the US, and I hate to say it, but mainly in Florida and Texas, and they were in our local MLSs, and there were a couple hundred of them at the time. And they pointed out a lot of them, unfortunately, were Keller Williams or Remax agents. And I'm only bringing that up because that was a direct quote from them when we were at this meeting. So let's take a look at a few Texas examples. Okay, so these were pulled from your MLS within the last week or so. And we have, you can see, lot listings anywhere, mainly Central South America. We're doing some commercial down there, and then a lot of residential listings, a lot in Belize and Mexico, and that makes sense for both Florida and Texas just because our proximity to the country. Dubai and Istanbul were quite interesting to me to see on there. Costa Rica, natural fit. We have a lot of Americans obviously listing in Costa Rica, and they're looking for US agents to help them market their properties there. And Italy was on there as well. We had 8 sold in Belize or Mexico. So curious as to how those were handled since they were closed in the US MLS. In Houston, currently 186 listings outside of the country. Mainly Belize, we have Costa Rica, France, and mainly Mexico, I think, was the highest out of all of these. But we're seeing a lot of the same names that come up on these listings. So why do the people in my region or anywhere in the world that have real estate businesses care about this? This is what was reported at our CIPS faculty meeting at NER when we had our meeting this past May. So 37 countries in the world were identified as their listings being in the MLS, in some MLS somewhere in the United States. $1.2 billion worth of sales, that meant the total amount of listings in the MLS, and then 50 million worth of commissions. Now that's commissions lost to the local agent as well as to the country's local economy. So the question is, how would all of our states feel if agents from another country were pulling this much revenue out of our agents' pockets and the state's annual revenue? So this is really kind of how we need to look at it, because this is how the countries overseas are looking at this as well. So let's hone in on some specifics. Licensing law. Who has it? Who doesn't? Why do I care? Well, Bahamas has licensing law. Panama has licensing law. Jamaica has licensing law. And then there are some states in Texas that have licensing law as well. Costa Rica and Belize have been lobbying for licensing law for many years now, but unfortunately haven't had it passed. One of the issues, particularly in Costa Rica and Belize with their MLS, is the inaccuracy of it. So they are having difficulty getting agents to report correct amounts for data. And when I was in Belize, I believe 2 years ago, we sat down and he said, well, we do have MLS, we're starting to get it moving, but we can't get agents to put all their properties in there. And then when they do make a sale, they're not reporting the correct amount of the sale because the seller doesn't want the public to know exactly what the house sold for. So it's not a true MLS by any means, because you have properties that may sell for $400,000 but are reported as selling for $200,000 in the MLS or property portal, whichever they're using. And then when someone goes to compare data or comps like we would do here, you really don't have a true picture. So this is a major issue in a lot of these countries right now, because they're not used to having an MLS and sharing data and sharing commissions with other agents. But let's talk about a few examples that are close to my heart from the Bahamas and Panama. I want to start with the Bahamas, but first of all, I want to thank any of you who have participated in doing any relief funds, donated anything for the Bahamians. They really, really appreciate that. This is going to be a very long process for them because of Hurricane Dorian. When I spoke to the real estate president of the Bahamas Real Estate Association, she called me a couple weeks ago and she was in tears, and she just said they're really losing a lot of business down there right now simply because everyone feels that all of the Bahamas was affected when it was really only 20%. So she asked that I put the message out that the Bahamas is open for business. They are still selling real estate. There's a lot of properties there that are completely unaffected. So I just wanted to pass it along, not for you to list them, but there are some great deals to be had right now in the Bahamas. So great time to start doing some referrals for your clients, particularly your luxury ones who are looking for, you know, that steal of a property somewhere in the Caribbean, right? All right, so an issue in the Bahamas, when I talked to Christine, who is the president of the Bahamian Real Estate Association, she called me and she said, Carla, we have an issue down here right now with a lot of agents listing properties. Particular instance was a Douglas Elliman sign was on a lot, and Douglas Elliman is not licensed in the Bahamas. They're out of New York, and there's an office in Miami. And when somebody came to question them about it and immigration came to talk to the agent actually tried to bribe the immigration agent so that he wouldn't be in trouble for actually having the sign on the lot. So they had a bit of a media coverage on this because, as you can imagine, this was a big deal for them in the Bahamas. And, you know, the last thing you want is bad media coverage for U.S. agents in another country, right? I get a weekly email from a company in Florida. They are not a member of the Bahamian Real Estate Association, but they are using the BREA, the Bahamian Real Estate Association logo on their emails. They say they have an office in the Bahamas, but according to the Bahamian Real Estate Association, there is no business listed there. So they are listing all kinds of properties there. They somehow have access to their MLS. They got it illegally, and this is a big deal. So where are we going with this? Well, there's a lot of things. Remember, I talked to you about the Douglas Elliman gentleman. Media really created an issue. So we're talking about immigration actually going after this gentleman, and he may not be allowed back in the country. So it's just one of those things that, you know, we really think it's easy to list property overseas, but there can be some serious ramifications. In Panama, this was probably sometime last year, I had a call from the president of ACOBIR. And ACOBIR is one of the real estate associations, and it's our cooperating association for NER in Panama. And the president called and he said, Carla, I have an issue. I had a call from someone I know. This person is a CIPS, and the person asked me if I would find them a buyer for a property that she had listed in Panama. And I told this person that, you know, I would try to help, but Carla, I'm confused because this person isn't licensed in Panama. This person has a CIPS and knows that Panama has licensing law. Why would this person be listing property in our country? And how do I handle it? Because I know this person very well. So I told him, I said, you just have to handle this just like if it was a stranger that asked you to list, you know, to help them find a buyer for their piece of property in your country. It's unlicensed real estate activity. So he had to call this person back. I don't know whether the person actually did not list the property, but they had it on their website. But it was a real problem, and it continues to be a problem really throughout the world. So being a CIPS does not give you an international license, nor does it give you the authority to list an overseas property. It does give you the education on how to interact with international clients and agents overseas. And being from another country, well, that doesn't give you the international license either. You may understand how real estate works in that country, but unless you're licensed there, if there's licensing law, or you own a legal real estate entity and you're authorized to sell property in that country, you really cannot participate in real estate sales in that country just because you came from there. And there seems to be a lot of confusion about that. So what is your risk in all of this? So let's talk about if you took the listing, right? Did you enter the country? How did you enter the country? Did you enter the country on a tourist visa or for pleasure? Or did you enter on a business visa? Because if you entered on a tourism visa or you marked on your form that you were there just for pleasure and not for business, but they found out that you were actually there conducting business in the country, then there's a huge immigration issue for you. And they're looking at taking this very, very seriously if they find out that you're in the country on a particular visa that you're not supposed to be on. And then you took the listing. How did you determine the value of that listing? Because most countries, as we know, don't have an MLS. So how did you come up with a true value? Did the seller tell you what the property was worth and you just listed it for what the seller told you? Did the developer just say this is what they wanted for the property? Is it overvalued? Is it undervalued? How do you know? And is your listing agreement in the US? Does your client know that they must, that any closing must take place in the country where the property is held, and all documents must be in the language of that country? Perhaps you don't know that either. So you actually have something listed in the United States, but say the property is in Mexico. The contract and the closing documents all need to be in Spanish because that's the only thing that's acceptable, because Spanish is the main language of the country. So perhaps you're not doing this properly. And then, a lot of people say, well, I need the listing agreement to put it in the MLS because then I have no way to get it to my website, and then it won't show up on different property portals. Well, one of the things with MLS is that it typically only recognizes US zip codes in order to filter out to other sites. So while it may go into your personal MLS, it may take the MLS will take it to your website as one of your listings. But unless, at least in our MLS in Florida where I am, there's a zip code. And if there's no zip code, it doesn't go to Zillow, it doesn't go to Realtor.com. So sticking in the MLS really is only getting it to your website. It's not getting it out to potentially 800 websites that it could go to. So the MLS really isn't helping you or your client sell that piece of property. And then who's going to show the property? Will the seller show the property because you're in the US? Is the caretaker going to show the property? Have you partnered with another agent? How do you know the property is secure? Who's going in and out of the property? Did you pay taxes? Well, say you closed on the transaction and you got paid in that country. Did you pay tax in that country as well as in the United States? Did the transaction go through your broker? Did you possibly launder money? And the answer is yes. And then what's your liability? Do you undervalue the market, did you undervalue the market value for you didn't know the market? What happens if the seller says, I asked you to evaluate my property and you said it was worth $500,000 and sold it, but I found out it's really worth $700,000 and you didn't know the market? And then one of the other things is, did you know your E&O insurance doesn't cover you when you're listing property outside of where you're licensed? So if you're listing property overseas, you're only licensed for whatever state you hold your real estate license with, not in Mexico, not in Costa Rica, not in Belize. So our brokers on the call, this should be your biggest concern right now. And then who pays when the buyer or seller sues you? Because this definitely can happen. This is a direct statement from Joe Schneider at the National Association of Realtors. He is in the global department. And this is NER's standpoint on this situation. This is a state issue as it directly impacts the person's license, which is obviously issued by the state. Our mandate is to educate our members that they are opening themselves up to liability by practicing in markets where they are not licensed to work in. So NER doesn't want you to do this, but at the end of the day, it is up to the state as to whether they're actually going to take action against you. But I kind of want to talk to you about how that may work. So last month, I had the president of the Bahamian Real Estate Association who came in to come to Florida Realtors, and we sat down with 2 Florida real estate commissioners. FREC is our licensing, where they do all the disciplinary actions. And we talked to them about the immigration issues and the listing of property issues that I shared with you a little earlier. And they advised me of some of these code of ethics that you might be violating if you were to be listing property in another country, and then for some reason if you were charged for violating licensing law or real estate law in another country. So your state then can choose to use the code of ethics to evaluate if you violated your US code of ethics, and then they could take the appropriate action to discipline you. So let's look at Article 11. The services which realtors provide to their clients and customers shall conform to the standards of practice and competence which are reasonably expected in the specific real estate disciplines in which they engage, specifically residential real estate brokerage, real property management, commercial and industrial real estate brokerage, land brokerage, real estate appraisal, real estate counseling, real estate syndication, real estate auction, and international real estate. This next sentence is important. Realtors shall not undertake to provide specialized professional services concerning a type of property or service that is outside their field of competence, unless they engage in the assistance of one who is competent on such types of property or service, or unless the facts are fully disclosed to the client. So, okay, so what are you going to say to your client? I've never been to the country. I don't know the real estate market there. How do you convey that to your client? And if so, if you do convey that, because this is pretty much saying if you don't have the competency in this area, as long as you've conveyed that to the client, it's fine. But if you tell the client, I don't know anything about the real estate market there, why are they even going to bother to hire you? So that's Article 11. We look at the standard practice 11-1. Let's look at this in depth. When realtors prepare opinions of real property value or price, they must be knowledgeable about the type of property being valued. They have to have access to the information and resources necessary to formulate the value and an accurate opinion, and be familiar with the area where the subject property is located. And this last line is pretty much what the FREC commissioners told me that they would look at. Because if you are licensed in the state of Texas and you're doing business in a city outside of the United States that you've never been to, or even maybe you have been into, but if you are not vested in the real estate market there, you could very well be pressed against this code of ethics and be violating this, and this is where they would take judgment. So you let people know you're an expert, but you've never been in the area where the property is located, and then you don't know how to accurately price the property. Is this becoming a little more clear to you now why this potentially is an issue? Standard of practice 12.5. This is another way you can potentially get in trouble, and it's with your marketing. So realtors shall not advertise nor permit any person employed by or affiliated with them to advertise real estate services or listed properties of any medium, in any medium, electronically, print, radio, television, etc. And I'm assuming that's going to include social media as well, without disclosing the name of that other realtor's firm. So point being is you need to be respectful when advertising another agent's listing. You know, we all want to help market another person's listing, but we cannot put it on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, for example, making it look like it is our own listing when it is listed by someone else. We do have to include that person's company name. Last but not least, standard of practice 12.8. And this is the obligation to present a true picture and representation to the public. It's to ensure that information on their websites is current, your realtor website. So are you putting properties manually on your website that maybe other agents have sent you or developers have sent you? So what happens when there's a price change on the developer's end or the listing agent's end? How do you know about that change? If we have MLS here, it's easy because our websites automatically change because everything is electronically fed from our MLS. But if we're manually doing this, we really have no way, unless we're in constant communication with the person that shared the information with us, to give a price change as to where this is correctly in today's market. And how do you know if a property is still active? What if that property sold a week ago and it's still on your website 3 months from now because you just keep it up there because you want people to see that you have listings overseas, and then someone finds out that this property actually sold? You're actually violating the standard of practice 12.8 here. So this could be an issue for you. All right, so now that I've been the bearer of all bad news to you, and the principal from those of you old enough who remember when you were bent over the knee in elementary school, and the principal had that little ruler, and they were allowed to paddle you with it. Let's chat about the good things, right? Let's talk about what you can do and how you can stay in good standing. So there's a lot of NER resources, and obviously if you're not a CIPS, we would advise you to become one, because that gives you greater capability of understanding the global market. And if you're not one, though, you can use the CIPS directory. And I have this link here for you on how to find CIPS around the world. This is the best way for you to find a referral partner and to refer the listing. Now let's talk about when you refer a listing, right? Because I see, if you're CIPS, we have a private Facebook page. And a lot of times what happens is an agent will get on there and they'll say, I need a real estate agent in Mexico. Okay, well, that's great, but where in Mexico? It's just like somebody from Mexico saying, I need an agent in the US. It's the same difference. So you need to really evaluate and assess your client's needs and find out where in Mexico. And if they don't know, you can't really refer them, because every state is so completely different. We're talking climates. It's just like, them wanting to be anywhere from California to New York. So you have to ask a lot of questions in order to take that referral. You want to know, what type of property is it? Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it industrial? And what they intend to do with the property, really, before you can place that referral. If for some reason when you're looking up the CIPS, there isn't anyone that comes up in that particular area, you can go to the IRM directory. Now this is the International Realtor Member. So an International Realtor Member is someone who belongs to the National Association of Realtors. So just because they have a real estate license or they work in the real estate industry overseas does not necessarily mean that they are a realtor. Just similar to here, unless you're a member of the National Association of Realtors, you are not an IRM. Now this directory has 5,000 agents overseas, and it's your go-to, right? So if you can't find a CIPS, you can search this directory by country, and you should use this site as much as possible. And by the way, this directory has your names in it as well. So if your profile is not complete, you may want to check this after we finish this webinar, because if your profile isn't complete on this website, now's the time really for you to update it. If you click on it, you will find that not only your name, but your language capability is on here, any designations that you have. So it's really important to fill this out in its entirety, so that when people from another country are searching for someone in your area, they'll be able to find you as well. Your global ambassadors are another great resource for you. They are always happy to assist you. So if, again, the IRM directory doesn't work for you, the CIPS directory doesn't work for you, contact the global ambassador for that particular country. Explain to them what it is that you're trying to achieve, and they will put you in touch with somebody in that particular country. Realtor.com International, this is a great way to find agents in that country that have active listings. I would get on there and just take a look and see who's on there. A number of our cooperating associations around the world use this Realtor.com International to put their listings on. So it'll give you an idea of what's listed overseas, how you can connect with some agents there, Or if you have a buyer maybe looking for a piece of property, it'll give you an idea of what's listed and be able to convey them and potentially make a referral to an agent in that country. And of course, we have the annual NER convention. And as you know, that is coming up at the beginning of November. It is going to be in San Francisco this year. And if you've not gone, I would highly recommend it. This is the way for you to build your global network. There are tons of opportunities for you at annual. If you're a CIPS, there's typically a special breakfast or lunch that are just for CIPS designees. We have the International Night Out, which is a lot of fun. All of our delegates from overseas do attend this dinner. So it's a very social way to network with people from different countries and those who are very much interested in global. There are roundtable sessions, normally on Saturday and Sunday. What this is the group of countries have an hour. So for example, my region, I believe, is on Sunday from 12 to 1. And every one of the countries in my region has an hour to set up a table. And anyone that came from that country can sit at that table, and you have the opportunity to go up and meet different agents from that country to learn a little bit more about that country and to create referral partnerships. They want to learn a little bit about your business, but really it's for you to absorb more about the country itself. And if you find that you have really hit it off with someone that you met, build that relationship, because that's really what is key in helping your business and staying in touch. So these people that come to convention typically come every year. Their whole point of coming is not only to be educated, but really to network with other agents. So this is your greatest opportunity at NER Annual to go and form your referral partnerships. Now, also, I'm going to be speaking at NER on Sunday on inbound and outbound risks. And we're going to cover a little of what we covered in this webinar today, but we're going to go a little more in depth about some of the other things that you can and cannot do. All right, so we have run a little bit early, but I thought we might have a lot of questions at the end, because I know there were a lot of people asking, okay, Carla, you know, what is it that I can do, or wanted to give me some examples. I do want to share, I do want to let you know that if you are listing properties overseas, you know, I'm getting emails, NER is getting emails from people that are seeing, you know, these on Facebook, they're seeing them on emails that they get through their inbox, and they're letting everybody know, hey, look, this person is licensed in Wisconsin, but they have, you know, 500 acres listed in the Dominican Republic. So your fellow realtors are, you know, kind of calling you out on this. I'm just letting you know. So it's another reason to maybe just be careful and avoid the risk. So I'm ready, Annie, if you have any questions that have come up, to start answering some questions for you.
Yeah, so we have one question. First, also, so this webinar is being recorded. I just want to say that I did not start recording before my introduction, so I want to redo that for Carla.
Thank you.
So Carla and her business partner formed your global consultants in 2010. She is a CPIS instructor and is presented at seminars and associations all over the world. In addition to teaching CIPS classes, she and her business partner have developed courses geared to students who work with foreign buyers and sellers. They are licensed educators in Florida, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Carla also serves on the Florida Realtors and NER committees and is the NER Global Coordinator for North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and as well as the former president's, liaison to Panama. So I just wanted to say that. But so our first question, does participating on a real estate association in the country of the listing help or protect me as a realtor?
Okay, I see this question, and I'm assuming I'll just give an example. So if you're a Texas realtor and you join AMPI as a secondary, which is the Association of Mexico, and you're a foreign member of AMPI, Does it protect you as a realtor? No. The purpose of joining as an affiliate of a foreign real estate association is really just for you to learn more about how real estate is conducted in that country and to meet other people within that real estate business. But no, it's not going to protect you one bit.
Okay. The next question, if I own the property overseas, may I list it on HAR without violating any of these you just mentioned?
Potentially. It's still listing property overseas. We go back to that same, you're taking money out of the country. You have the right to sell your own property anywhere. I think the issue would be when you put it into the MLS, because again, that transaction has to close overseas. And again, there's a liability, right, because of the E&O and everything else. So you can market your own property because you have the right to do that as an owner, but I would participate with the sale of an agent in that country just to protect yourself.
Okay. And then the next question would be, I am Mexican. Can I get a license in Mexico?
Countries typically have laws as to, yes, potentially you could. Would you have to spend time in Mexico? I mean, are you still a resident of Mexico? Are you doing a dual citizenship? If you were still a resident of Mexico, then you would have to pay taxes in Mexico. You potentially would have to get your, depending on the state, you could get licensed in that particular state. So for example, you could be part of a cooperative group there, but then you should be listing your properties within the country that they are listed, so in Mexico, and not putting them in the Texas MLS.
Okay. The next question, is there a place for members who are licensed in both Texas and another country? Is there a place for agents to list properties, or how to disclose this?
Hi, Christine. Is there a place for members who are licensed? I'm just reading the question again so I can understand it and answer appropriately. You can help market a property. The thing is, when you're listing a property, your name is on it. So if it's, how can you share it? You can help market something, but you have to disclose, and I think Ed, this is going to answer your question as well that's coming up. If you're co-listing, it's somewhat okay, but is the transaction going to close in that other country? Is the document going to be in the specific language of that country, right? And then how are you going to get paid? Because theoretically, you should be getting a referral fee. You can't be getting a commission. You can only really ethically be getting a referral fee. And if you list the property, then it's a commission.
Okay, so our next question, I have listings in Belize and use the HAR 301 International Listing Agreement signed by the seller. We have co-brokered with an agency in Belize to take care of all showings and paperwork. We do not have any of our signs or advertising in Belize, but do have the listings active on MLS. Is this an acceptable practice?
Not really, because again, you're listing property in the United States. Unless you're really licensed in Belize to sell that property, then the answer is really no. Can you help them market it and put the other agent's name on it? Then I would say then that's probably okay. But again, the transaction, everything has to be within Belize and not in Texas.
Okay. And next question. Okay.
Let me stop you for a second here, because the only way that you're basically going to be disciplined is if someone in that country calls you out and starts prosecuting you in that country for this, all right? Then it comes back to Texas. They report that to Texas, and Texas will then decide whether you have violated your license law and the code of ethics, and how to appropriately discipline you in the state. Now, while this hasn't really happened just yet, it's beginning to happen. So, you know, you doing this now, there's no one really out there saying, you know, it has to stop tomorrow. But if someone in Belize decides to do something against you tomorrow and it comes to Texas, the process begins. So it's a real risk is what I'm saying for you to do this. It's up to you what you do. Just know that there is a risk and that you may be violating your US license when you do this, should it come down to the Texas Real Estate Association or Real Estate Commission.
Okay. So is it okay to co-list properties with another broker in another country?
Hi, Ed. Again, you can, how do you co-list? If you're not licensed in that country, theoretically, the answer is no. Or you're not a practicing agent and authorized to sell real estate in that country.
Okay. Next question. To pay taxes on any future commission in a foreign country, do we need to register as a business there?
Okay, we're talking a referral fee. No, the referral fee would come from the broker in that country to you. If you are collecting a commission on something that you listed overseas, then you should be taxed in the country where the property closed, but that's also reportable income in the United States. You're going to be double taxed. Okay. Unless you find out a way to do it through a CPA in a different way, because I'm not a CPA.
Okay. If I list my own overseas property and sell to the US buyer here locally, do I still need the other agent from the other country where the property is located?
The answer is no. The issue that we're talking about today is just, oh, you're asking if you list it. Well, where are you? If you're listing it in the MLS, there's still potentially risk. But no, you're allowed to sell your own property. It's just, again, today's webinar was all about basically putting properties in the MLS.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then last question, will we be having marketing agreements, or do we have any? So co-listing would be acceptable.
Okay, marketing agreement and listing are two different things. Having a marketing agreement is fine as long as the broker that owns the company on the other side agrees to it. So say, for example, you know, have an agent in Campeche who has, you know, a hotel that they want to sell and they're having some issues getting it marketed. Can they give you a marketing agreement? Yes, they can do that, but that does not make it a listing agreement.
Okay, and then the next question, developers like Grand Hyatt, it's Anna, Simca, Marriott, okay for a broker to list their properties here on MLS and offer referral commissions, as some of these developers are US companies that don't list properties with their local agents as a practice. When countries don't license to sell real estate, how do we list properties without a license that does not exist?
Well, if you have a developer and the developer wants to sell their own property and they are not a member of the National Association of Realtors, the developer has the right to sell their own property, just like anybody can sell their own property. So the issue is if the developer is a member of NER and they do have agents working for them in that particular country, it really should be going through the agent that works for the developer in that country. Again, you can do a marketing, some sort of agreement. I see Christine's asking us this question as well. You can do a marketing agreement, but theoretically, we go back to, you know, they just don't want the listings in the MLS. Now, a lot of your larger corporations, Christine, have marketing agreements or they've created it. And years ago, I know it was either Coldwell Banker or Prudential, I know had one through legal. It was very specific as to what you can and can't do. I would go back to your brokers because at the end of the day, this is their E&O policy. You work for them. So they're going to want to make sure that they're protected. And I would suggest that their legal department come up with something for you that's going to make them happy because you work under them.
Okay.
Any questions?
If anyone has any other questions, feel free to type in. Oh, okay, we have one. Have you ever completed a global transaction? I think, as confusing as this may sound, if you are following the MLS rules for exclusive right to sell executed by the property owner, and you have a local broker working with you and co-list the property, you should not have to be reprimanded for it. You are following every rule.
Well, you're following every rule here in the US, but you may not be following the rules in that particular country. Because if you are not, even if there's no licensing law, if you're not in the real estate business and you're not a resident of that country and allowed to work in that country, okay, and receive revenue, it's just like coming to the US. If you don't have a green card in the US, you cannot earn any money in this country. You don't have the right to work in this country, and it works the same way overseas. Unless you have the proper documentation to work in that country and earn money in that country, you're operating illegally.
Okay, also, so I guess does a referral instead of a co-listing agreement unless you are licensed in that country?
Yeah, unless you're authorized to do business in that country. Let's just put it that way, because not all countries have licensing law, but yes, still referral. And the referral can be whatever both parties agree. I mean, a referral can be a pretty nice referral if you both agree to that.
Someone also just commented, but there is exclusive agency.
Exclusive agency means that it's not listed by anyone else anywhere.
And then also,
so how do you do exclusive agency in the US if 5 people have that property for sale in Costa Rica?
Right, okay. Also, another comment, most countries do not have licenses and you are not working in the country. That is why we do referral agreements. I do agree with you, but the referral is still a commission. I think still is a commission, but.
Well, it's, you're getting paid. You don't want to call it a commission. A referral fee is when it goes from agent to agent. The commission typically is when it comes from your broker, but just it's a referral fee.
And then also with a referral, you can't publicize in our local MLS, correct?
Yes, because you don't have the listing.
Can you belong to a brokerage in another country, Mexico, for example?
If you are licensed, if you are authorized to work in that country through their governmental laws and you can earn income in that country, then yes, otherwise no. I've disappointed everyone today. I'm so sorry.
A lot of good questions. Are you an attorney?
I am not an attorney. As I said, I am just talking about listings and code of ethics and what our other countries are conveying or issues there as far as people working in countries where they're not authorized to work.
Okay, well, that defeats the purpose of the international sellers reaching out to the U.S. market for buyers.
Well, you can still find a buyer. If you have a buyer, what difference does it make whether you have the listing?
Also, some feedback, great information, Carla. Education is key.
Thank you, Nell. I needed that.
Yeah, so we still have about 9 minutes left. If anyone has any,
Thanks, Denise.
more positive feedback. This was great.
It's a hard conversation to have. And 10 years ago, the conversation was really different, because we weren't getting feedback from our cooperating associations. And the issue today is that our cooperating associations really want to, have us follow this code of ethics because they're not allowed to come and practice real estate here. They don't want us coming to their countries and practicing there.
Okay, we have more comments. If you have an exclusive right to sell and it is understood that you are working with a local broker and you will be receiving a referral fee for the transaction, I believe it is the same.
I don't think it is, but I'll go back to the question of someone who asked me if I was an attorney. I would ask your broker that question and see how your broker feels about you listing property in 2 different countries and not being a resident of that country, and then what the country laws were.
And then what steps is NAR taking to police international listings? I think that's an important question.
NAR is aware of what is going on. Again, if we go back to that slide, they are saying that this is a state issue. It is not their job to police listings. All right, we are just talking about the state, and if you did something overseas, NAR wants to be on good terms with their cooperating partners and vice versa. That is NAR's job. What you do with your license in your particular state has nothing to do with NAR. Your state is the one that will regulate any licensing that you have. But NAR absolutely supports our cooperating associations.
Okay, also, so as a Mexican, I could, I guess, have both licenses if it's required in Mexico.
Potentially. You would have to talk to the government and find out how you do that in Mexico, whether there are any residency regulations for you. Every country is going to be different as to how you can work in that particular country. So no, CIPS is not worthless.
Yeah,
CIPS is a wonderful education program, and it gives you the ability to network with many agents overseas and be part of a very exclusive network of less than 3% of real estate agents around the world.
So I guess I'll go to our next question. Why does Texas have an international listing agreement form?
It's a good question for you, Annie. I can't answer that one.
Okay. I don't have an answer as of right now, but.
Does NAR accept the form, the Houston International Listing Agreement? NAR doesn't have anything to do with listing agreements.
Okay. I think this is the most amount of questions I've ever had in a webinar.
I knew there would be a lot, so I'm glad we finished a few minutes early.
Yeah. No, okay.
All right, so Mr. Anonymous, please type and tell me what you didn't think was correct, because I don't want you to be confused.
Yeah, I agree. Also, we can move on to, let's see. Thank you, Megan. I think those were great comments that she made.
Oh, okay. Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, we just really you need to look at this is how would you feel if an agent from Colombia came into your market area and sold a house that you potentially could have sold and made commission on, and they took the money right back to Colombia? And it happened every single day. You know, we have licensing law here, we have real estate laws here, and whether licensing law exists in other countries or not, you know, we don't let that happen. So it's about having respect for our fellow professional overseas and really just doing a referral, because that's what CIPS is about. Mm-hmm. Meeting people around the world and doing referrals.
Exactly. I guess, so our, oh.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you. Okay. So just to wrap this up, let's see, I think about Hain comment.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it.
I think it would be very helpful for us to try to educate brokers. Most brokers.
Hannah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Most brokers have no idea of what to do. Asking your broker may not necessarily answer your questions. But they are the ones that are responsible for you, and they're the ones that hold the E&O policy for you. So again, start with your broker. If your broker doesn't know what to do, there are other resources, and I'm happy to refer them to any people.
And then Christine.
I think this is a great conversation. Thank you, Christine. Challenge is to guide brokers and agents to work and help them build an international business if interested. Yes. I mean, you have great resources by being the ambassador associations to Belize and Texas, you know, work on those. Go join AMPI, join some of the other associations, you know, CREA in Canada, for example. You can join. That is just such a wonderful way to meet other agents around the world and network with them. But going to annual convention, someone asked earlier, when is that? I think it's November 6th to the 11th off the top of my head, in San Francisco this year. If you go, there are agents that just really want to meet you, and all they want to do is have people to network with, so you will help sell their product. They are happy to do referrals with you.
Yeah, and then also to address, see, the anonymous attendee. So we have a new department, global and commercial services, and we absolutely are promoting, you know, our economic development, global initiative. I'm trying to look up, we're working with, we have an AMPI, yeah, localized program, that we have a couple associations partnered up with. So we are absolutely trying to promote Texas, and we have MIPIM. I don't know if you guys are aware of MIPIM. It's the conference over in France in March. So also we have another question. The referral part is understood. What we all want is to be able to collaborate with international brokers when listing properties internationally. I would not mind a Colombian agent to list a property in my neighborhood in her country if she's working with me. That whole point of global real estate.
Okay, well, it's illegal for her to list a property in the state if she's not, doesn't have a green card and doesn't have a real estate license.
Okay, well, looking back at this comment from the anonymous attendee, I don't think it was very confusing. I think it was very well executed. I think we need to cut it off here because it's 11 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my email's there. I'm happy, you know, get in touch with me. You know, if you have any questions, I will answer to the best of my capability. But again, you just have to keep in mind, you know, practicing overseas is that if you don't have the right to work in that country, because there are laws that require you to be able to be a resident of that country in some capacity or have the proper documentation in order to receive remuneration in that country. So that's, you know, you might be violating country laws as well as real estate laws, which again could turn around and come back and bite you here.
Right. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
We'll be posting this recording as well as your presentation deck. And thank you again for everything.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Have a good day, everyone.